Health outcomes. Changes due to interventions. To bring positive change, patient experiences and health must both improve. Healthcare costs must be lowered, and clinician and staff burnout has to end. But our problems are big. 133 million Americans have at least one chronic disease. 500,000 people are dying every year from hospital errors, injuries, and infection. The shortage of primary care professionals will be as much as 100,000 in just the next 5 years. Big problems require bigger solutions. Positive change needs acceleration. It needs to happen now. But these are not so easy solutions that many don't want to hear, and even few are willing to talk about. How to lead such a change? How to discover, discuss, and disrupt healthcare to make a difference now? This is VITALS, Visionary Health Leadership in Action.
Good afternoon and welcome to VITALS, Value, Innovation, Technology, Leadership, and Service, the tools that today's transformational leaders are using to transform the healthcare landscape. VITALS is brought to you by Northeast Ohio Medical University in partnership with University Hospitals of Cleveland. Today, I'm pleased to bring to you a very talented transformational leader, Dr. Sara Whittingham, who is a physician, a patient, and a national advocate for Parkinson's disease. Rather than a normal introduction, we're going to roll a piece of video footage that will introduce Dr. Whittingham.
I'm Sara Whittingham. I'm an anesthesiologist at Cleveland Clinic Marymount Hospital. I'm also a clinical faculty member here at Northeast Ohio Medical University, and I have Parkinson's disease. I'm probably the luckiest Parkinson's patient in the world, because one of my favorite hobbies and thing I'm most passionate about, which is, fitness and running and racing, I love to race, is the thing that's going to help me the most and help me to keep ahead of Parkinson's disease.
I was sitting on the couch one evening and I noticed a tremor in my arm, and I didn't think much of it. I think I was probably in denial, but my husband talked me into going to talk to the neurologist, and he confirmed that I had Parkinson's disease. I was devastated. I didn't know if I was going to have to stop doing the job that I loved, and I thought that I would probably be disabled in a few short years. I suffered from anxiety and depression. I wasn't sleeping well. I gained 30 pounds.
In a way, I feel like I went through the stages of grief, grieving for the future that I had previously seen for myself. I was super fortunate to come across this research study put on by Dr. Jay Alberts at Cleveland Clinic, studying the effects of cycling on the progression and management of Parkinson's disease.
And I quickly realized that the more that I rode the bike, the better I felt. And so over the course of the year-long study, I got up to being able to ride the bike for an hour at a time. And I had the thought that if I can ride the bike for an hour, I can probably ride the bike for 3 hours. And if I can do that, I could probably finish a half Ironman again, something I hadn't done in about 5 years. Those first 2 half Ironmans after my diagnosis went way better than expected. And so I thought of a new goal, and that was to get to the finish line at Ironman Kona, the most epic race in all of triathlon. 9 weeks before the race, I found out that I had been selected to compete as an ambassador athlete. Somehow, I ended up on the Today Show, and I was able to share my story there with the hope of educating and inspiring others living with Parkinson's disease. In addition, I was able to share my story at Ironman and bring awareness to how Parkinson's disease is affecting our post 9/11 veterans. An Ironman triathlon consists of a 2.4-mile swim, followed by 112 miles on the bike, and then a 26.2-mile run.
I get all teary-eyed when I think about making that right turn onto Leahy Drive towards the finish line. When I was first diagnosed, I didn't think that, I would even be able to run a 5K again. Just being able to be out there and push myself, I still love it. I feel the biggest goal that I could think of to accomplish when I just, is the finish line at Kona. And I am so lucky to have this opportunity to do that and hopefully share it with everybody else with Parkinson's and realize that we're all in this together and we can we can, make a difference in each other's lives.
Nothing, not even a Parkinson's disease diagnosis, can stop Sara Whittingham in her mission to show what is possible with self-belief and an iron will.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sara Whittingham, and I'm going to share my journey since I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and how I, the quiet introvert who tries to avoid the spotlight, ended up in this role as an advocate. And I'll share what I've learned along the way and what I've gotten out of it. When I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, sorry, I got all emotional after the video. When I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in the fall of 2020, I was completely overwhelmed, and I visioned the worst for my future. I visioned my future based upon what I had learned about Parkinson's disease in medical school over 20 years ago. And in my mind, that was the image from our medical school textbooks, which was the image of a hunched over older man who shuffles about, shakes a lot, needs somebody else to help take care of him, and is on a downward trajectory with nothing that he can do about it. It wasn't until I met other people who had been living with Parkinson's disease for 10 to 15 years and saw some of the amazing things that they were able to do, that mindset began to shift. As I talked to some of these other people, I also heard the same theme over and over again, that when they learned that they had a neurodegenerative disease and that there was no cure, they also believed that the rest of their life would be a downward trajectory. And it took well over a year, several years for many people to overcome this. In my case, my neurologist tried to paint a rosy picture for my future. And I kind of blew him off thinking he was just trying to make me feel better. In hindsight, the best thing for me at the time of diagnosis would have been to connect with a local community center and meet other people who'd been living with this disease sooner than later. Eventually, I was connected with In Motion, which is an amazing community center that we are lucky enough to have here in Cleveland. And I attended their series of Parkinson's disease 101 classes. In those classes, I met other people who had been diagnosed over the previous year with Parkinson's disease. We learned from experts and other people who had been living with the disease for 10 to 15 years. And we learned about the importance of exercise and how exercise is incredibly powerful to help us control the future of our disease. We also learned about the importance of establishing a care team with a movement disorder specialist, a primary care physician, a physical therapist, psychology, psychiatry help if needed, and an aggressive exercise plan moving forward. At the conclusion of each class, we had a mini exercise class to give us a taste of what kind of classes are offered for free at In Motion. These included yoga, boxing, spin classes, circuit training, and one called Loud Crowd, which is to help us improve the projection of our voices and help decrease the aspiration risk as we get older. It was all of this that helped, in addition to the research study that I participated in, where I was encouraged to ride an exercise bike over the course of a year, that helped set me on the trajectory that got me to Ironman. Fast forward 2 years, and I get back into running. I end up finishing 70.3 half Ironman triathlons, and I get offered a spot to compete as an ambassador athlete at Ironman Hawaii. I realized with this that I would have a platform on which to share my story, and I wanted to make it about more than just me. I also realized that that in order to help more people, I wanted to make that platform bigger. And so I shared the exciting news that I had been selected with my movement disorder specialist and Jay Alberts at Cleveland Clinic. A few days later, I heard from the communications team, and I told her my story. And at the end of that, she said she was moved and asked if it would be okay if she shared this with her friends at the Today Show. I said yes and kind of giggled, thinking, wow, that would be really cool, but I'm really not that interesting. But sure enough, a few weeks later, I learned that they would be picking up the story. I was also able to share my story at Ironman as part of an ambassador athlete program, panel, with 7 other amazing women from around the world who'd also overcome incredible adversities to be at Ironman. My story was also shared as part of the documentary on Ironman, and I was able to share the powerful work that they're doing at InMotion with others around the world, and hope that other communities can see the power of community in bringing people with Parkinson's together to exercise. With this platform, I also sat down and decided I wanted to come up with some goals of what I wanted to accomplish with this. And so I came up with 3 things. The first was to inspire, educate, and give hope to others living with Parkinson's disease and their care partners and physicians. The second was to bring awareness to how Parkinson's disease is affecting our post 9/11 veterans. And the third is to bring attention to the importance of continued research. With bringing educating and other people with Parkinson's, it was really important to me to educate the power and importance of exercise. There is a growing body of evidence showing that intense physical activity can slow the progression of the disease. And there's a pilot study out of Yale showing that in some cases it may actually reverse the progression of the disease. There's no medication or surgery that is able to do this. And it gives Parkinson's patients the incredible power to improve their long-term function, their quality of life, and their outcomes. I also wanted to educate physicians because I, as a physician, had no idea how powerful exercise is and how important it is in the management of Parkinson's disease. In my mind, that hunched over older man that I had pictured does not exercise, and he certainly didn't do triathlons. I also had a physician early on tell me that I shouldn't run anymore because I'm a fall risk because I have Parkinson's disease. It's kind of hard to argue with him right now about this because I have a broken hand after a fall, but I'm still running and it still helps. So it was all of these messages that I wanted to convey as part of that. About 18 months after my diagnosis, I learned that one of my Air Force Academy track teammates, Jenna, had also been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. She is also a physician. She also deployed to Afghanistan, and we happened to be diagnosed with Parkinson's disease the same month. And to us, that seemed like more than a coincidence. And so we decided to look into it a little bit further. And so through Facebook and friends of friends, we found 3 other people who had been cadets at the Air Force Academy while we were there who had also been diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease. This put it at least 1 in 1,000, where one would expect it to be much lower than that. It's about 5 times higher than the general population. And so we decided we needed to look into this further. And so I was able to connect with the VA and connected with the lead neurologist for Parkinson's disease for the VA, Dr. John Duda, who's been incredibly helpful. But he had not thought to research this because he is not seeing this in his practice. And so Jenna and I sat down and kind of thought about this. And we came up with 3 reasons why he may not be seeing this. Number 1, maybe it's just a fluke and this cohort from the Air Force Academy is not representative of the rest of the military. Number 2, many younger veterans, post 9/11 veterans, are still in the workforce and still have other health insurance, and so don't necessarily use the VA healthcare system yet. The average age of the VA patients who use the VA system is in the mid-60s for men. And so many of our younger post 9/11 veterans are still seeing civilian medical care. The third reason was that these veterans had been denied access to VA programs. Jenna and I had both applied for VA disability benefits and been denied. We both separately appealed the decisions, as physicians, writing up separate summaries stating that Parkinson's disease is well known to be established to exposure to toxins, and it can take 10 to 15 years after an exposure before somebody develops symptoms and gets diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Current policy only gives VA benefits to people who are diagnosed while they're still on active duty or within a year after leaving active duty. So we decided to research this further. And so through a series of Freedom of Information Act requests, we learned that there have been over 5,000 post 9/11 veterans who have applied for VA disability benefits for Parkinson's disease. And over 2,000 of those have been denied benefits. To us, this was pretty mind-blowing because it told us 2 things. 1, over 40% of these veterans had been denied, and 2, that the incidence of Parkinson's disease in post 9/11 veterans could be as high as 1 in 500 to 1 in 750, which is about 10 times what a non-veteran would expect. So we decided to take it a step further. And I contacted my congressman, Dave Joyce, and have had the opportunity to speak with a couple of his staffers who have been incredibly supportive and incredibly helpful. And I shared my story with them. And we are working together to include legislation to support funding to study this in more detail so that we can figure out the actual numbers of people who are living with Parkinson's disease of various generations, and to try to see if we can figure out a reason why so that we can prevent it in future generations. In addition, we've also reached out to Dr. Ray Dorsey, who's an expert in environmental toxins and brain health. And Jenna and I will both be attending his conference in Washington, D.C. in May to meet with other policymakers, media, to help bring attention and to learn more about this. The third thing I wanted to bring attention to was research. And as I learned more about Parkinson's disease after my diagnosis, it became immediately apparent to me how much we've learned about Parkinson's disease in the last 20 years, and how that body of knowledge has improved my quality of life and my future. In medical school, I learned about levodopa carbidopa as the main medication to treat Parkinson's disease. And it's a great medication, and it's one that I take. But I also take 4 other medications that help manage my symptoms and help me to perform at my best so that I can exercise aggressively. I also, in addition, the body of research on exercise has made a huge impact on my life and given a hope to a whole lot of people suffering from Parkinson's disease. So that's important going forward. I've been very impressed with the work being done here at Northeast Ohio Medical University by Dr. Sheila Fleming and her work studying the effect of exercise on the brain in a Parkinson's model. I've shared my story as different media stories come through, such as the Women's Health article, USA Today, the Ironman documentary, and Today's Show. I've shared on other forums on Facebook, including the Physician Moms group, which has been incredibly supportive and gotten through to a lot of primary care physicians and neurologists so that they can share the message with their patients. I've also shared my story to Parkinson's patients, especially through the Parkinson's Fight Club, which is a group of us who are, the first rule is no whining, just get out there and fight. And also to veterans groups. 4 years ago, I would never have imagined that I would end up in this role as an advocate. I would rather be sitting over there, probably in the back row, avoiding the spotlight. But as I hear from all of these people reaching back out to me, friends, strangers, people with Parkinson's, people without, saying that after hearing my story, that they've decided to sign up for a 5K or started running again, or tried to get it into triathlon or start cycling. And hearing those stories has brought me a great amount of joy and pride. Sorry. In addition, it also reinforces to me the power of leading by example, and how we as health professionals, how much power we have to set the example and get out and exercise and share our struggles with our patients, because the more that they see that, the more that they feel that they can do that as well. I feel that through advocacy over the last 6 months, that I've been able to make a bigger difference in more lives than the rest of my medical career combined. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. I would now like to introduce Monica Robbins, Senior Health Correspondent for WKYC Cleveland. Thank you.
Hi, can you all hear me? First, I want to apologize to our Zoom audience who unfortunately couldn't hear the audio of the video in the very beginning, but I want you all to know that it will be on the YouTube channel afterwards, so you'll be able to see it at your leisure. We already have a number of questions coming in, and I want to remind our live audience that if you have any questions, feel free to step up to one of these microphones and I will call on you as soon as possible. But our first question comes in from an anonymous attendee who says, thank you so much for being here. As an accomplished medical professional, veteran, athlete, and a person living with Parkinson's, what do you hope that your daughters and other young women take away from your inspirational journey?
I hope that, we realize that, you can do anything if you set your mind to it. And I think, overcoming adversity and moving forward is a great opportunity to show your strength and make an example, set the example for others. Okay.
Okay. Hi, Sarah, thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing your story with us. I think a number of us in the audience probably know somebody with Parkinson's. So I actually have two questions. One's a very short question. My sister-in-law has Parkinson's and she's also a veteran. And so I'm wondering if you could share the Facebook page so that maybe she could join on that Facebook page as well. And I don't know if her story corresponds with, what you're looking for. And the second question is, for those of us who know people with Parkinson's, what is the best way that we can support people with Parkinson's as they go through their journey?
So good question. So first of all, yes, I am on Facebook and I do share my story there. It's open to the public. I think it's Sara Whittingham 5. There's a picture of me with the Ironman finisher photo if you don't recognize it. And yes, it seems like most people do know somebody who has Parkinson's disease. And I think the most important thing we can do is to encourage them to help and to interact with other people with Parkinson's disease, because they can understand what they're going through and set the example. My neurologist is an expert in Parkinson's disease, and he was blue in the face about how I was going to have a good life. And I didn't believe a word he said. But seeing other people who had been living with this disease for 10 to 15 years and seeing how amazing they look and the amazing things that they have accomplished, that's what it took for me to change my mind. So connecting either over Facebook groups or in person, even better, with other people who are going through it and being there for each other, I think is the best thing somebody with Parkinson's can do, especially as soon as possible after diagnosis.
Thank you. I want to remind our Zoom audience that if you have questions, it will be, please put them in the Q&A. And also someone asked for the link to the video on the Zoom chat. Jean, is that on the VITALS YouTube page or NeoMed? It'll be on the NeoMed YouTube page, so you can search for it there. Amy wants to know, you mentioned one medication that you're taking. She's curious to know what are all of the medications that you're on, and if you could list them slowly.
All right, it's a handful. So I use a Nupro patch, which is a transdermal patch that's it's a dopamine agonist. I take Wellbutrin, which helps with my anxiety and depression, but it's also dopamine reuptake inhibitor, so it helps with Parkinson's symptoms as well. I take amantadine, which interestingly was initially an antiviral drug. That's how I learned about it, but it also is very helpful with Parkinson's symptoms. One of the main side effects of the dopamine agonist is that they can cause excessive daytime sleepiness. So I also take New Vigil, which helps me not fall asleep at red lights, which I did once before I was taking that, maybe. I also take some supplements. I take vitamin D to help reduce fall risk over time, and multivitamin and vitamin B.
Are there any of those medications that you would say contribute to your ability to do more exercise?
Oh, absolutely. If I forget to take my medications, my husband and I swim early in the morning, and if I forget to take my medications, my swim stroke is all over the place and very sluggish. I'm about a minute per mile slower when I run, when I'm medicated versus not. So I like to think them as my legal performance enhancing drugs, because they make me much faster than I am without them. It's very obvious to me.
How does Parkinson's interfere with your fitness training, and what symptoms, if any, are the most bothersome?
Yes, so I've had to regroup on how I look at my fitness training. And a lot of it has just been learning to be more patient with myself and not really setting any high expectations as I walk out the door for my run. When I would go for a run, I'm either going to feel great or there's going to be a struggle. And so when I head out the door, I don't know if I'm going to be running for 10 minutes or 17 miles sometimes. It's just, if I feel good, I just keep going. If I don't, I say, okay, maybe not today. And maybe I'll get on the bike and try something different. So just being flexible and being patient with myself, just because it's kind of unpredictable about how I'm going to feel, and just trying to have fun. That's the most important thing. I think when picking an exercise for people with Parkinson's, obviously not everybody's going to go and sign up for a triathlon, but I think it's important for people with Parkinson's to find an activity that they love doing and keep it fun, because if you don't keep doing it, then there's no point. So I think that is the main thing, is to make it fun. And if it's not fun, find a way to make it fun. You know, think of the fun things, each good thing along the way, and congratulate yourself and reward yourself at the end.
So we obviously know you run, bike, and swim, but John wants to know, what variety of other exercises do you engage in? And do you find one more effective than another for the treatment of your symptoms?
So yeah, running, biking, and swimming takes up a lot of my time. But one thing that has been incredibly helpful to me is circuit training. I do that one day a week, and it's a lot of core strength and heavy like squats, lunges, and it's pretty intense. I leave there exhausted, but that has really made a huge difference as well.
So we were talking earlier, HIIT training, getting that cardio up as much as possible. That's the trick.
That's what a lot of the research has studied so far, is the high intensity cardiovascular exercise. From my personal experience, I feel like yoga has made a huge difference for me as well, both calming my mind and also working on balance. Falls and aspiration are the two biggest morbidity for people with Parkinson's disease. So yoga and working on balance, I've noticed a huge difference in how well I'm able to balance with working on yoga. So I think a variety of exercises. I think everything in moderation, which is kind of why I like triathlon, because I'm not running every single day. I'm not biking every single day. It's a little bit of a different thing. So I think it's important to, find a variety of things that you enjoy doing, and with others, if possible. The social part of in motion, I think, is a huge part of it. Seeing other people get together and share kind of the struggles that they've faced with Parkinson's is very helpful.
Hello, my name is John. I'm a student in the College of Graduate Studies. Your commitment to exercise is really inspiring. And when I talk to my parents, we often talk about how they're aging, and we also talk about exercise and how that helps with them. When they talk to providers, unfortunately, it's not quite robust. It's either do less or do more. And I think there are limitations to that approach for people who are really committed to committing to exercise and for the sake of their own health. So from your personal experience as a provider, how has your experience affected how you talk about exercise when you talk to patients and colleagues? And also, how would you want other providers to talk about exercise, just kind of using all the experience and the knowledge that you have?
So it is important for physicians to talk to patients about exercise, and every single one of us is aging, and all of us are on a very slow decline, and we all have the power to benefit from exercise. And so I think it is important for physicians to speak with their patients about that. I'm an anesthesiologist, so my patients are asleep most of the time, so it probably wouldn't really help a whole lot. And they probably don't want to hear about exercising when they're getting their broken ankle fixed. But I think that is a really important part of overall wellness, and for everybody, not just people with Parkinson's disease, because there is evidence that it can slow cognitive decline and physical decline, not just in people with Parkinson's, but in everybody. And so that's a really important thing, I think, for physicians to share and set the example too. If you go to your physician and they're 300 pounds and look like they haven't, couldn't walk across the street without getting out of breath, that message is probably not going to be as well received as somebody who is living that lifestyle themselves.
Thank you.
Kendra wants to know, with veterans suffering from Parkinson's, is there a difference between the number of women and men diagnosed?
So I don't know that data yet, and which is part of the reason I want to get funding for a research study to look at all of that in more detail. Interestingly, in that cohort from the Air Force Academy, it's over five classes from the Air Force Academy, so about 5,000 people. 3 of the 5 of us are women. And also 3 of the 5 of us worked in the medical field, which I don't know if that makes it's such a small cohort, and I don't know if there's any significance to that. But that's like a very small cohort. So I really think it's important to study all of our veterans to see if there are any correlations there.
Is Parkinson's hereditary because this person's father had it?
Yes, Parkinson's does have a hereditary component to it. I forget how many genes that are known are linked to Parkinson's. I think it's around 17. I have been tested for all of those genes, and I don't have any of them. But there are links to certain genes and a familial risk of Parkinson's disease. And so I think it's important for those people in particular, if you know you have a family member with Parkinson's, the sooner you can start exercising, the better, because as you decline, it becomes more and more difficult to get back into it. So another reason for everybody to go exercise.
Do you follow a particular diet?
I am probably, that's probably my biggest weakness, is that I am not as good at following a diet. I kind of have a sugar problem. I really like sugar. But I try to eat as healthy as I can, but I do notice a difference. Like around the time of Halloween or Easter last week, when I overdid it on sugar, I could feel different. I felt more sluggish and not my normal self. So I do notice a difference, and it's something that I need to work on, is improving my diet.
Just one thing you have
Yeah.
to work on. Yeah. Did you pick up athleticism after diagnosis, or were you already competing and training?
Yeah, so I'm lucky in that I've always been an athlete. I started running with my dad when I was 5. And so I am incredibly lucky that I had that muscle memory and that background physical fitness. It's kind of interesting to me that I had been doing Ironmans back in 2015, 16, 17. And over those years, I continued to get slower and slower, and I didn't know why. And when I look back on it, I think I was probably self-treating my Parkinson's disease with exercise and didn't know it, but was continued to get slower. That was an early sign of the disease. I ended up getting so frustrated because I got so slow and was so stiff running that I was like, well, this isn't fun anymore. So I kind of gave it up, and that's when I was diagnosed. So I think, I was self-treating for a while and didn't realize it.
Donald says, I think you were so very inspiring, and thank you so much for all you're doing. And thank you for being so courageous to share your story. I'm curious how you were able to transition from clinician to advocate and dealing with this challenge.
Yeah, so I'm still working as an anesthesiologist, and this is kind of something I do on the side for fun. But it's been an interesting journey. I still do both, and it's, sometimes hard for me to get up in front of groups, but I think that it gives me an opportunity to interact with others that I don't get as much in my clinical job.
This is on the same lines of that. Has your diagnosis changed the way you view the practice of medicine, and how has it impacted your career as an anesthesiologist?
Absolutely. So after being diagnosed, I feel like I have a lot more empathy for my patients and what they're going through. I meet patients on the day of surgery, when they're going in for probably one of the more scary things that they've gone through, and especially teenagers. I take care of a lot of teenagers having orthopedic procedures, and it's probably the most scary thing that they've gone through. And I feel like just having been through something, that's scary, that you don't know what to expect, has helped me to empathize more about how they're feeling and how I interact with them. Coincidentally, I do a lot of ortho cases. And so I meet a lot of Parkinson's patients who've fallen, who've broken something and now need surgery. And I've shared with them my story and, tried to get them connected with InMotion. And I, can kind of see their faces light up when they realize that, oh my gosh, like my doctor's going through this. She knows what I'm going through and how hard it is right now. So I know a lot of people don't like to, share their private medical information, and that's fine. For me personally, I've gotten so much support from my colleagues at work and from patients that it's really helped me a lot too in doing that.
John Duda is watching.
Oh, yes.
And he says, hi, please make sure that all veterans with Parkinson's disease know that we're here to help them in their journey, and they can find us at parkinsons.va.gov. You want to give the rest of the story here?
Yeah, so in addition, we know, as the current policy stands, a veteran who was diagnosed more than a year after leaving active duty is going to be currently denied VA benefits. But in the future, if we're able to get that policy changed, I believe that those benefits will be backdated to the date that you initially applied. It also helps us get the data we need to help support and advocate for this. So in addition, the VA offers amazing programs and helps with some of these community programs of establishing care teams, and gives a lot of other things that are more difficult to establish within, our current, private practice or community settings.
What are some of the weaknesses you found in the healthcare system because of your journey?
Well, yeah, so that's been an interesting, figuring out some of the insurance pieces have been interesting. The new Pro patch is not an inexpensive drug. And so it's something that I have to get pre-approval for and get approved by the insurance companies every year. And it's not something that a lot of pharmacies keep in stock. So trying to last minute saying, oh shoot, they didn't send the patch, and not realizing that I have to go get pre-approval for, have my doctor submit I hadn't really had to deal with all of that before. So that was a little bit frustrating. And it also gives me appreciation of how, I had the best of everything all along the way. And I kind of knew the system and was able to set up physical therapy appointments or, get in with a movement disorder specialist. And it gives me appreciation to the challenges that our patients face just to get in to see their healthcare provider and everything that they've been through to get to you to begin with. So it's really given me an appreciation of, how to streamline things. And I think like the VA has been working on trying to, have care teams all co-located in one place so that if somebody comes in with Parkinson's disease, they can all automatically get them plugged in with the primary care doc who's going to be talking to the neurologist, movement disorder specialist, and be talking to their physical therapist and the psychologist and working with somebody who's going to be helping with their exercise program all in one place. And it's a lot to do, but it can make a huge difference and make it easier on the patients to get the care that they need.
Hi, thank you for sharing your story today. It's special to me as my mom had Parkinson's. And in my previous role, working with Altman, I was involved with the LSVT program and the Big and Loud program. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the big movements and the voice therapy versus strenuous exercise as far as helping people with Parkinson's.
Oh, absolutely. I think all of that's important. I don't think just doing one thing. I think all of it. And the loud crowd, I don't go to those classes, but when I'm home alone or in my car, I sing really, really loud. And my husband has had the misfortune of coming home when that was happening one day when I was on the bike and offered to sign me up for some singing lessons. But I think, I think, things like loud crowd, anything aspiration is one of the things that biggest morbidity of for Parkinson's patients as we age, and getting an aspiration pneumonia can be a big problem as we get older. And things like loud crowd and really, practice singing very loudly or talking loudly can really help reduce those risks. And especially like the big movement classes, I know at In Motion, they have classes where they have those big round exercise balls and they have like drumsticks and they're like doing these drums like this, and practicing doing those big movements. As part of the physical therapy I went to for Parkinson's, working on my arm swing, because my left arm tends to just kind of sit there and be weird. But the more I practice like the big movement arm swing, that starts to come back too. So, our brains are amazingly adaptable, and continuing to train them in all of those ways. So those things, as well as balance, is huge too. So practicing being thrown off balance and catching yourself over and over again can help potentially reduce the fall risk. So I think the more that we continuously train our brains to make up for what we're losing otherwise, the better Parkinson's patients will do in the long run.
Do you think it's possible for exercise to reverse Parkinson's?
I don't think it's going to end up reversing it completely because cells have died. The study out of Yale that I referred to showed that the cells were healthy. The cells that were still alive were healthier than they were at the beginning of the study, and were transmitting dopamine signals more effectively. But it doesn't bring back to life the cells that have already died. And by the time of diagnosis, I don't know the number, but a huge number you're already pretty far advanced in the disease. And so I don't think it's going to completely reverse you back to where we were before diagnosis, but can help the cells that we have left work more effectively together and stay healthy.
I'm going to paraphrase Robert's question. He says he was diagnosed 2.5 years ago. He's 71 and he's athletic. He was prescribed a medication, but has been experimenting with 1 or 2 doses in exercise and with some success. Is that a good idea?
To experiment with?
He's been experimenting with 1 or 2 doses of the medication. So he's changed the prescription.
So it depends on what medication he's referring to. Probably most likely he's talking about levodopa, carbidopa, or Sinemet. And I found, with that medication in general, that medication is an amino acid, basically, that crosses our blood-brain barrier and is converted into dopamine. And so I found when I exercise, especially in triathlons, I will take an extra dose because it does help me move better. And I in my brain, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be faster because I've got more dopamine. So I think, and there's not a lot of harm to be done. If you take too much of it, you might get a little bit nauseous, but it's not going to do anything, too bad. So like an extra dose, before you exercise, if that's the medication he's referring to, then that can be helpful. Others, probably not so much, but that would be the one that I would take.
John wants to know, are there any ways in which having Parkinson's has had a positive effect on your life or made it fuller or richer?
Oh, absolutely. Like I feel like compared to where I was 4 years ago, I think the most important thing I've gotten out of this is to learn the power of gratitude. And I like to quote Michael J. Fox on this when he says, gratitude is what makes optimism sustainable. And I found that by finding something to be grateful for every day and also focusing on something that I did well every day and focusing on the positive has made me a better physician, a better wife, a better mother, all of, just in taking the time to appreciate everything that I do have and trying to ignore the negatives as much as possible. So I feel in that way, it's made me a better person. And I really enjoyed, helping other people too. And I didn't feel like I got to do that quite as much, in my clinical job.
Because your patients are asleep.
Because my patients are asleep and if I do my job well, they don't even remember that I existed, which that's fine.
Hi, I'm a student here in the College of Graduate Studies, and I guess I wanted to know, as like future healthcare leaders or like current health systems, is there anything more that we could do to perhaps better support Parkinson's patients?
Yeah, I think, as a overall health system, I think the value and the cost savings for how much these community centers are helping Parkinson's patients is priceless. And so I think, more financial support and having insurance companies actually reimburse for some of the services that they provide, because these services are keeping these patients healthy longer and maybe delaying the amount of time before they need an expensive surgery like a deep brain stimulator, which will cost, who knows how much. But so, these programs are doing amazing things. So I think encouraging health systems to implement these locally so that they can, get the care teams together in one place and bring Parkinson's patients together to exercise, because, it doesn't cost very much to exercise, but the benefits, if we had a medication that did all of these things that potentially reverse the progression, we would be in line, fighting our insurance companies to pay for it. And yet this is essentially free. You can go out and go for a walk for free. So to try to find ways to encourage people to do that as much as possible through financial support, either programs or, decrease, insurance rates if you exercise a certain amount. I don't know, but there's a lot of different ways to do that.
For students starting out in their careers, they have so much on their plate, but how has advocacy impacted you in your career? And would you suggest they start looking for things to advocate for earlier?
Yeah, I think I kind of stumbled onto this one, but I think finding something that you're passionate about, and this obviously does not relate at all to the field of anesthesia, so it's completely, I almost feel it's completely separate. But I think if there's something that you are passionate for, that you feel that your voice can make a difference, it's incredibly rewarding. And I've been amazed at how, as a physician, I've been able to connect, with my congressmen and speak to them, and they respect my opinion. Because I don't think they get to talk to a lot of physicians. So, because most of us are working and seeing patients and not really, interacting on the political side. So, if I'm able to get funding for research to study this, I don't know how much money we're talking, but it could be $1 million+ to study all of this. And by advocating here and, with my congressman, I'm able to, with not a ton of work, make a huge impact on potentially a lot of people's lives.
What have you learned from having to deal with politicians and Congress? And
oh, I'm still very early on this, and I basically have learned to say I know nothing, and so don't assume I know anything about it, what it is that you do, and what do you suggest are the next step forward. And I feel, especially Dave Joyce's team has been awesome as far as, kind of guiding me and say, well, these are some options that we could explore, and we'll talk about it and see where we land. But because the options they presented to me are things I would have never thought of. So, I leave that to the experts, but, letting them know what my goals are and what I would like to accomplish and what data I think is important to receive from the study.
We still have a few minutes left. I want to advise our Zoom folks that you still have time to put in your question in the Q&A. April wants to know, what can you share for family and friends who have someone that recently was diagnosed, and how can we empathize and encourage them?
I think for me, the worst thing was when people felt sorry for me. Like, people look at me as like, oh, you have Parkinson's disease. I'm so sorry. And for me, that was the worst. I want people to be my cheerleaders and not pity me. And I think a lot of other people with Parkinson's feel the same way. We don't need pity. We don't need like, oh, I'm so sorry, your life is over. We need people say, what can we do to help exercise with you? Do you want me to go to this aerobics class with you or circuit training and things like that? So encouraging them to exercise and maybe be at their side and exercise with them, and be their cheerleaders rather than feeling sorry for them, because that's the worst.
What's your advice to those patients who obviously haven't exercised or been part of that and have been, sitting in a chair, but now they see you?
Yeah.
How do you start?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're all starting in different places. I was fortunate that I was starting pretty high up on my fitness level, but there are a lot of people who have been, wheelchair bound potentially, and there's still ways to exercise. Like we mentioned before, the big movement classes, and, just start small and make it fun. I mean, that's the most important thing. If you go out and you're like, oh, that was torture, I don't ever want to do that again, then that's kind of pointless. But if you find a way, even, walk to the mailbox and back today, and maybe next week make the goal to walk it to the end of the block and back. But take small steps and keep it fun. It's like, when you're on that walk, stop and take the time to enjoy, what it smells like and what birds are chirping, and take time to enjoy and be grateful for all of those things instead of focusing on walking, which could be difficult for some people. But set goals as you go. I mean, nobody's going to go out and go from the couch to running a 5K in a month or 2 months if they've been, sedentary. But you might be able to walk to the mailbox or to the end of the block, or even do, seated exercises. There's so many different ways to exercise, countless, and you could make up your own if you wanted. But I think it's important to find something that you love to do and that you'll stick with.
Since your diagnosis, has your view on the medical and social models of disability changed? And if so, how has it made you a better physician?
That's a good question. I think our disability system is very tricky because in a way it encourages people to become disabled, which I don't like that at all. I don't want to be encouraged to be unable to do things. And so that's tricky for me because it is difficult for me to work as many hours as I did before and still have time to exercise and not be a complete zombie. So I think models that encourage people to stay active and not become disabled, like I could probably make as much money going on disability as if I went to be working half time. And I would prefer to work half time, but like if I can make the same amount going on disability, like I feel like I'm not really incentivized to do that. And so I think, and I don't know the fix, but it is frustrating to me to see people like, oh, I'm going to go on disability, and they're proud of that. And I think trying to find a way to discourage that and stay healthy and stay in the workforce is powerful. And I don't have a solution for that, but that's how I feel about it.
You mentioned deep brain stimulation, and this person says that someone they know has recently underwent the surgery. What do you hope will be accomplished by this type of research? What are your thoughts?
Deep brain stimulation has been huge and hugely helpful for a lot of people. And I think it's a great technology, and it continues to improve year over year over year. But, I'm hoping through exercise, I can delay that as long as possible. And, maybe the technology will even be better, or maybe if we're super lucky, there'll be a cure, who knows? But I mean, it has its place, and it's very helpful for a lot of people. I've seen people, who weren't able to get their tremors and their symptoms controlled with medication, have deep brain stimulation, and then be on hardly any or no medications after that. And so for people who have a lot of side effects from medications, who may not tolerate the medications, or the medications aren't as effective, it is a great option.
Are you aware of any current research studies to join that follow those who have a family history of Parkinson's?
I don't know any offhand. I know, I recently I was asked to be part of a similar study at Cleveland Clinic, and I was busy and I didn't fill out all the paperwork, but I know that there are a lot of studies looking at, your genetics and family history and trying to predict that, because it would be hugely beneficial to be able to diagnose this disease earlier or predict who's going to get it and who's not, because the sooner you can get these people exercising, the more quality years and the higher quality their future will be. And so, there's some new biomarkers where we're hoping that we can diagnose the disease even earlier. That is huge because, if I happened to be doing Ironmans before all of this, and that made a huge difference in my ability to be where I am now. And that was just because that's what I do. But most people don't regularly go do Ironmans. And so I think by getting these people who know you're very high risk of having Parkinson's disease, you need to be doing these things now to delay your delay actually having it, or maybe put it off forever. Potentially, that would be awesome. That the sooner the better.
There is the brain study at Cleveland Clinic, but I'm not sure if it involves Parkinson's, but it is about neurodegenerative issues, but more focused on Alzheimer's, dementia. But you never know. Google. That's how you find things. Is your Today Show debut online, recorded somewhere? Is there a link available?
Yes, it is online. If you, it's on YouTube, and if you Google Sara Whittingham Parkinson's or Parkinson's HODA, it pops up on YouTube, and it's there. It's a 7-minute clip on the Today Show.
And shameless self-promotion, she'll be on Channel 3 this evening as well. So,
and can I add one thing there? I was also included in the Ironman triathlon documentary, and that is also on YouTube. So if you go to Ironman Triathlon, the 2023 documentary, episode 1, it's the last 7 minutes of there. They included my story, and they included a great piece about In Motion, with video of a class that from there, and an interview with Ben Rossi, who is one of the founders of In Motion too. It's really very well done.
and you're also part of the Ironman panel,
Yes.
the ambassador panel.
Yes, and also on that same Ironman YouTube site, there's an ambassador athlete panel from 2023, in which I spoke about my diagnosis and advocacy for veterans there as well.
And also for people who'd like to follow you on social media, do you want to share that?
Yes, I probably should have looked at what my Facebook handle is, but I'm on Facebook, Sara Whittingham. I think it's 5, but there's a picture with me at the Ironman finish line. You can't miss it. And it is open to the public. So if you want to follow me along on Facebook and scroll back and see all the pictures and stories from Ironman that have been posted over the last 6 months, it's kind of fun to go back and look at that.
I certainly can't ignore this questioner, Dr. Langell.
Well, thank you for your talk. The question I have for you is based around this university has been well known for teaching the humanities of healthcare and healthcare practice. You've worked now with a lot of Parkinson's patients. You've had your own experience both through the initial diagnosis as well as the treatment landscape. What has been the biggest problem or complaint that you've heard from patients about their journey, whether it's the initial diagnosis or their treatment access?
So the number one complaint is people feeling that when they get the diagnosis, that that they're not given a message of hope, and that there's something that they can do moving forward. And I hear over and over again about how this sets them behind the 8 ball, because they're perseverating on this idea that they're on this downward trajectory, instead of leaving with a prescription of go to your local community center, meet other people with Parkinson's, and start exercising as soon as you possibly can. And so that delay of people, like, it was probably a good year before I really got back into exercising. And I probably am faster than most people in making that transition from feeling sorry for myself and that I have this, incurable disease to, wow, there's something I can do about this. Let's get going. And so I think, just in the way physicians portray that message. And I've worked in primary care for a few years before anesthesia residency. And so I went back and kind of looked at how I thought about that. Somebody comes in with a problem, you make the diagnosis, you give it a name, prescribe a medication, and then a schedule follow-up. And in my mind, I'm like, yay, I did a good job. But in the patient's mind, they're like, what? I have Parkinson's disease. I have a neurodegenerative disease, and there's no cure. And they leave feeling hopeless. And I think, even me, my neurologist went above and beyond trying to convince me I had a good future. It wasn't until I connected with those other people at the community center. So I think just taking the time to kind of put ourselves in our patient's shoes about how they're hearing the message about whatever chronic disease has just been bestowed upon them, and thinking about how this is going to affect their future. Because I've realized that everybody pictures the absolute worst scenario, whether it's a cancer diagnosis or Parkinson's or anything. We all envision the absolute worst thing that could happen, instead of maybe, changing that mindset to say, okay, this is what I need to do to have my best life going forward.
Last question.
Yeah.
Are you going to run Boston and Cleveland?
Well, a good question. I'm planning to run Boston. It's not going to be fast. I fell actually while running, but it's I'm hoping I'm just going to go enjoy the day and have fun and get to the finish line.
I don't know that I'm probably not gonna run, I'm probably not gonna be able to walk very well for a while after that. But so probably not gonna be able to run the Cleveland Marathon. I am signed up for a half Ironman in July, up near Rochester, New York. And then I'm planning to do the full at Ironman, Wisconsin in September for Ironman.
Well done. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
your story, and you're an inspiration to all of us, no matter if we are diagnosed with it or not. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I'll hand it back to Dr. Langell.
Next time for Vitals on May 2nd, it also will be in person and on live as a hybrid opportunity when we'll hear from Erica Steed, the new CEO for Metro Healthcare in Cleveland. Thank you.
Health outcomes. Changes due to interventions. To bring positive change, patient experiences and health must both improve. Healthcare costs must be lowered, and clinician and staff burnout has to end. But our problems are big. 133 million Americans have at least one chronic disease. 500,000 people are dying every year from hospital errors, injuries, and infection. The shortage of primary care professionals will be as much as 100,000 in just the next 5 years. Big problems require bigger solutions. Positive change needs acceleration. It needs to happen now. But these are not so easy solutions that many don't want to hear, and even few are willing to talk about. How to lead such a change? How to discover, discuss, and disrupt healthcare to make a difference now? This is VITALS, Visionary Health Leadership in Action.